Sit-tight leaders who have captured the institutions of state, silenced opposition voices and won consecutive elections have been a regular feature in African democracies. Cameroon's Paul Biya, Uganda's Yoweri Museveni, Equatorial Guinea's Theodore Obiang Nguema Mbasogo are all prime examples. Biya has led his country for over 4 decades, winning each presidential election conducted, but 37.5% Camerooners live in poverty. Museveni has been ruler since 1986. 41.7% of Ugandans live in poverty. Equatorial Guinea's Obiang Mbasogo has led his country since 1979, holding the status as the world's longest-serving leader. Despite being an oil-rich nation, more than 70% of the country's citizens live in extreme poverty. And they all also have something else in common. They are also some of the most underdeveloped countries in the world, and according to the Transparency International Corruption Index, some of the most corruption-ridden countries in the world as well. Comparatively, Southeast Asian countries such as Indonesia, Malaysia and Singapore, who were colonized like most African countries, are now competing with Europe in terms of development. They also operate some form of democracy. So, why such a huge difference between these countries? Well, some have blamed the kind of democracy practiced in them. Many African countries have largely embraced the Western-styled liberal democracy, while many in Southeast Asia practice call it a strongman democracy, where, yes, elections do take place, but in the end, it is won by what you might call a benevolent dictator. Professor Abiodun Adeniyi explains why democracy has aided development in Southeast Asia countries, but has failed in Africa.
These countries that you are referring to, the kind of democracy they have is not completely the Western democracy. We are seeing some readaptation, to their own culture, to their own peculiarities and particularities. We've seen some of them reflecting their religion in how they've modeled their democracy. We've also seen some of them reflecting their secularity in how they model their democracy.
Liberal democracy supposes the rule of law, protection of individual liberties and rights, and limitations on the power of the elected representatives and the primacy of private capital and enterprise. In Africa, Rwanda can be held up as an example of benevolent dictatorship. The country is one of Africa's fastest growing economies, hitting a 7.3% growth rate in 2023, according to World Bank figures. Yes, it is heavily criticized as being a bad example for democracy because its president, Paul Kagame, has been in charge since 1994 and accused of silencing political opposition. So why these contradictions in African democracies?
There seems to be a consensus among the power elites to propel the countries to development, to bring about development, and they have been able to produce national heroes that became beacons of their development, that helped the country to keep their focus.
But what about other African countries where democracy seems to have taken a firm hold? Well, let's look at Nigeria, for instance. Since 1999, the country has had 6 democratic transitions. But development has been slow-paced. Corruption has been rife, resulting in over 70 million of the country's 200 million persons living in extreme poverty. In Nigeria, democracy is seen to benefit only a few. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo blamed this on the wholesale adoption of Western liberal democracy in Africa.
The essence of any system of government is the welfare and the well-being of the people, all the people. Here, we must interrogate performance of democracy in the West where it originated from, and with all the inhibitions of what we are left with.
In other parts of Africa, however, instability remains. 6 successful coups have taken place in Sudan, Burkina Faso, Guinea, Mali, Nigeria, and Chad in the last 4 years, and almost a dozen unsuccessful ones. Democracy may be a good form of government, but as post-independence African history has shown, it can be manipulated to serve the narrow interest of a few ruling class, and this has been the bane of Africa. The challenge facing Africa is to evolve a system that makes democracy a tool for development, whether it is through a collective mass action or a beneficial dictator. What matters is for the life of the people to have a meaning. Ijoma Osamo, AIT News, Abuja.